Today we're going to review one of the most important tenses in English, the present simple. We use the present simple to talk about daily routines, habits, facts, and stable situations. It is one of the first and most useful verb forms in English, because we use it to describe what people do in their everyday life, and what is generally true. First, let's talk about when we use the present simple. We use it to describe stable or permanent situations, things that are normally true for a long time. For example, Messi plays football for Barca. I live in Madrid. She works at a company. My brother studies English. They cook in a restaurant. These sentences describe situations that are part of someone's life. We also use the present simple for actions that happen regularly or quickly, especially in sports or commentaries. For example, Messi runs to the ball, the player passes the ball, the goalkeeper catches the ball. Now let's look at how we form the present simple in positive sentences. For most verbs, the base form of the verb stays the same with I, you, we, and they. For example, I earn money, you build houses, we open the restaurant at 9, they fail the exam sometimes. However, with he, she, and it, we usually add s to the verb. For example, he earns money, she builds houses, it opens at 9, he fails the test. This small s is very important in English grammar. Sometimes the spelling changes a little. For verbs that end in s, z, ch, sh, or x, we add this instead of s in the third person singular. For example, I catch the ball, you catch the ball, he catches the ball, she catches the ball. Another example, I pass the salt, you pass the salt, he passes the salt, she passes the salt. The pronunciation also changes slightly, because the extra syllable makes the word easier to say. Another spelling rule appears with verbs that end in y. When the verb ends in consonant plus y, we change the y to I and add this in the third person singular. For example, I copy the recipe, you copy the recipe, he copies the recipe, she copies the recipe. Another example, I fly every summer, she flies to Paris every year. These spelling rules help us pronounce the verbs more naturally. Now let's talk about the negative form of the present simple. To make a negative sentence, we use do not, don't, or does not, doesn't, plus the base form of the verb. We use don't with I, you, we, and they, and doesn't with he, she, and it. For example, I don't work at JISFA, you don't live in Madrid, we don't sit down during the meeting, they don't stand up. With the third person we say, he doesn't walk to work, she doesn't go to Barcelona, it doesn't open on Sunday. Notice that after doesn't, the verb goes back to the base form. We say she doesn't work, not she doesn't works. Next, let's learn how to make questions in the present simple. For verbs other than to be, we use do or does at the beginning of the question. The structure is do does plus subject plus base verb. We use do with I, you, we, they, and does with he, she, it. For example, do you run, do they live in Madrid, do we sit down here? For third person, does he run, does she work at a company, does it open at 8 o'clock? Remember that the verb stays in the base form after does. When we answer these questions, we usually use short answers. For example, do you like pizza? Yes, I do, no, I don't. Another example, does she work at a company? Yes, she does, no, she doesn't. And, do they live in Madrid? Yes, they do, no, they don't. These short answers are very common in everyday conversation. We often use the present simple when talking about food, cooking, and daily activities. So let's look at some useful vocabulary. Foods include lemon, mango, melon, mushroom, onion, pasta, pear, pepper, beans, carrot, cereal, chicken, garlic, grapes, honey, jam. Kitchen objects include bowl, can, fork, cooker, fridge. Cooking verbs include add ingredients, mix, cut, bake, fill, roast, boil, prepare. For example, I prepare dinner at home, she cuts the onions, we boil the pasta, they roast the chicken, he mixes the ingredients in a bowl. We can also use adjectives to describe food. For example, boiled eggs, fried chicken, roast vegetables, fresh fruit, wet ingredients, empty bowl. These words help us describe how food is prepared, or what it looks like. So, to summarize, the present simple is used to talk about routines, facts, and stable situations. We add s or less in the third person singular, we make negatives with don't and doesn't, and we form questions with do and does. This tense is extremely important, because we use it every day to talk about our habits, work, and daily activities.